This is part 2, episode 65. Qin Mu and Cripple continued staring at each other. Old Ma was warm-hearted despite looking cold. "We're all adults, so stop throwing a tantrum. We're here to see how you're getting by and if our limbs are still usable." Cripple smiled. "Old Ma had run over here from Great Thunderclap Monastery, so you should know he's here to see you specifically. Great Thunderclap Monastery is thousands of miles away from here, and only 1,000 miles away from disabled elderly village. As for me, I'm not here to see you. My leg was at Imperial Preceptor's Manor, and you happen to be the closest." Qin Mu's heart was warmed when Old Ma said, "Don't mind Cripple's harsh words, he's actually a good man. When you were young and always wet your bed, Granny was annoyed by you as she had never raised a child before, so she wanted to send you away to be raised by the neighboring village. When you were sent over the first day, you were back on Granny's bed on the next. Granny sent you over a few times more, yet you always came back mysteriously. It was Cripple, of course, who had stolen you back." Cripple shook his head. "I did not. I hate kids the most. If I didn't have just one leg, I would have kicked his balls daily." Qin Mu felt a stab of pain, and he said in disbelief, "Granny sent me away, because I wet the bed when I was young. But Granny dotes on me so much." "Quite a few times," Old Ma said. "Granny had never given birth nor had she raised a child before. You peed like a waterfall and cried at night, cried when you were hungry, cried when you were stuffed, and even cried when you couldn't sleep. Even the cow that was fenced up was driven crazy by you, so it would be weird if Granny wouldn't have been annoyed. Us old geezers were so annoyed that village chief and apothecary had agreed that it would be a good thing to send you away, as the village would become more peaceful." The pain in Qin Mu's heart worsened, and he said with a black face, "Grandpa village chief and Grandpa apothecary also wanted to send me away. How did I not know about this?" Cripple smiled. "You were not a year old, so how would you remember? It would have been fine if you had just peed on the bed, but you even shit on it. Mute had originally wanted to send you away to be raised by others and even included a milking cow to make the offer more tempting for others. Yet you stopped wetting your bed soon, so you weren't sent away. Grandpa Mute also wanted to send me away." Qin Mu was silent for a moment. "Luckily there's still Grandpa Blind and Grandpa Deaf who dote on me." Old Ma said, "Blind indeed doted on you. But after he raised you high up in the air and you peed on his face, he did not say anything after Granny wanted to send you away." Cripple then continued the story. "When you were young, Deaf was the most annoyed by you. You often climbed onto his desk and covered everything in ink. You even peed into his inkstone," he sighed. "Still, you were cute when you wet the bed. You became not so cute when you grew up and peed on the stone statues in the village." Having received many psychological blows, Qin Mu said hoarsely, "Grandpa Ma, Grandpa Cripple, I'm now the cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult, so can we not mention wetting the bed? Let me take a look at your leg and arm." Cripple smiled at Old Ma. "This incident of him being sent away after wetting the bed always cracks me up. I'm sure I'll laugh until I jump out of the coffin upon remembering it even after I've died." Old Ma revealed a smile. "Me too." Qin Mu walked into the courtyard with a black face and moved the medicinal cauldron and furnace in. He checked the arm and leg of the two people, and took out Junior Protector sword to slice an opening on Cripple's leg, taking out a few drops of blood to check him in detail. After a moment, he cut open Old Ma's arm and also took out a few drops of blood. After studying them for a moment, he said, "Even though the life force in Grandpa Ma's arm has been depleted by half, it's been preserved well. It seems like someone used a Buddhist incantation to vibrate the properties of the blood in the arm, keeping the blood fresh. With some nourishment from spirit pills and miracle medicine, the life force can be recovered, so the arm could be reattached. After training it for a few years, it would return back to its original state. Old Ma said, "My arm was placed in Thousand Buddha Pagoda where the physical body of previous Rulai rests. Monks chant incantations day and night to preserve the activity of the body." Qin Mu jumped in shock and cried out, "There is really 1,000 Buddhas in Great Thunderclap Monastery?" Old Ma shrugged. "I didn't count them, but there should be." Qin Mu composed himself and checked on Cripple's leg. "Grandpa Cripple, this leg. The blood has already spoiled and the leg has died. It can't be reattached anymore." Cripple's face turned pale white, and the smile on his face vanished as he cried out, "How is that possible? I'm known as the divine legs and these two legs were trained to the realm of God, so how could one just die? Furthermore, it was chopped off just recently, merely some 20-30 years ago. I don't believe my leg is inferior to Old Ma's divine fist, it's definitely still alive." Qin Mu revealed an honest smile. "My condolences, Grandpa Cripple. It's already dead and can't be reattached. Furthermore, I tasted your blood just now, and there was the taste of 5 spices and a smoky flavor to it. I reckon it was turned into a dried leg by Imperial Preceptor." Cripple laughed from extreme anger. "Rascal, fooling me again. How could Imperial Preceptor be so poor to smoke my leg into dried meat?" The moment he said that, he became nervous. Imperial Preceptor is indeed very poor, he wouldn't have turned it into dried meat, right? Qin Mu was pleased with himself. Old Ma said, "Don't scare him, thieves are timid." Qin Mu smiled. Even though Grandpa Ma's arm and Grandpa Cripple's leg were less active than Grandpa Butcher's lower body, the life force within them is still there. "I'll first use medicine to activate your severed limbs, and after 10 days to half a month, they will recover. When they are reattached, there should be no problems." Grandpa Butcher's lower body had been on Grand Shaman's body, so there were no hidden injuries left behind. "Yours are not in such a good condition since there was no nourishment from a living body." Old Ma and Cripple let out a sigh of relief. "As long as they can be reattached, it's good." Cripple smiled. "I took a portion of spirit herbs from the palace's treasury, so you should see which spirit herbs can be used. If you lack any, I'll go and, borrow some more." "No need. The warehouse of Imperial College should have the needed herbs." Qin Mu came to the courtyard, and was about to check the types of spirit herbs there when Hu Ling's voice reached him from outside. "Young Master, Imperial Preceptor came to visit." "Imperial Preceptor is here." Could it be that what Grandpa Cripple did have been traced all the way here? Qin Mu was astonished. He turned around to close the door to the main room. Tidying up his clothes, he opened the gate to see Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor standing outside. This middle-aged man, who shook the world with his might, was ill at ease. He stood quietly for quite some time before saying slowly, "Imperial Academician is well-to-do, could you lend me some money?" Qin Mu was bewildered as he smiled. Imperial Preceptor came this time to borrow money. The magnificent Imperial Preceptor actually lacks money. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor answered truthfully, "When I went out for battle, a thief came into my house and cleaned everything out. Now my pockets are empty, yet I still have to go to North Garrison King's Manor to offer my condolences. I really don't have any money to spare." Qin Mu's heart was moved slightly. Could Grandpa Cripple have cleaned out Imperial Preceptor's manor and not left him any money? Grandpa Cripple may have lost a leg, but is still more nimble than me. He smiled. "Imperial Preceptor, how much money do you need?" Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor calculated for a moment and said, "My salary is 800 Great Abundance coins a month, so I'll borrow the salary of a month to tide me over." Qin Mu told Hu Linger, fetch 1,000 Great Abundance coins over and pass them to Imperial Preceptor. Hu Linga gave a sound of acknowledgement and slipped into the room. Qin Mu smiled. Is there a need for Imperial Preceptor to be so poor? The man shook his head. Too much external desires would affect one's cultivation and wisdom. With lesser desires, money is of no importance anymore. Suddenly his gaze flickered and he smiled. There are other people in your room. The person is an existence that's like a roulette sitting there motionlessly. That's not right, there should be two people. The other blends with the heaven and earth, drifting without a resting place. It seems like he could escape at any moment. What a superior body technique, which almost made me overlook him. Academician, why are you not inviting me in to take a seat? Qin Mu shook his head. Imperial Preceptor, I'm not going to invite you in. My elders have come, and they are injured, so it isn't convenient for them to meet people. Oh, so they're injured, that explains why there are so many spirit herbs in the courtyard. I'm also injured, therefore it's indeed inconvenient to disturb them. Hu Linga brought a huge coin pouch over, and Qin Mu took it from her, handing it to Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor with a smile. If Imperial Preceptor is tight on money, there's no need to return. Imperial Preceptor, a person of noble character can be poor, but there's no need to be poor. Being poor is not a requirement to be a noble person. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said, I have to return. The Emperor's reward will come in a few days, and I'll be able to pay you back then. I just need this to tide me over the next few days. He expressed his thanks and bade farewell. Qin Mu waited until he walked farther away, before telling Hu Linga and the dragon Qilin to guard outside again. He walked into the main room and asked, Grandpa Cripple, you cleaned out Imperial Preceptor's manor. What do you mean by cleaned out? Cripple shook his head. There was not much money in his manor to begin with, and he didn't even have any valuable furniture. The thing worth the most was probably Def's painting, which is priceless. Qin Mu was puzzled. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was really that poor? He was an important minister that had power over all levels of society, so how could he have no capital? There were some officials in Eternal Peace Empire that were compradors in mining, some set up refineries, casting factories, and had unspeakable wealth. As the Imperial Preceptor, how could he be so poor? Cripple took out a scroll from God knows where and opened it up. This painting of the sword god's back should be a village chief, right? Def should have seen the village chief young, Keek. This painting can't be seen, else the eyes will become blind. He rolled back the painting of sword god and threw it at Qin Mu. I'll give it to you, use it to ward off evil. The painting of village chief painted by blind makes it hard for ghosts to come near you. Don't open it. With your cultivation, you'll turn blind if you take a look and might even die. Even though the paintings of Def from back then had yet to reach the god realm, the person he had drawn was too powerful, so you still can't see it. Qin Mu was skeptical, but he placed the painting in his Dao Tai sack. Old Ma said, Def had indeed seen village chief before, but it was reverence in him, more than anything. In the village, he was closest to Mute. Now that Mute left without saying a thing, I reckon Def will be unable to keep still and will definitely come out to find him. Qin Mu was moved. Ever since he left the village, the people of disabled elderly village had come out one after another. Even though these old folks said that they didn't miss him, they had all walked out of the village for him. He concentrated on distinguishing the spirit herbs that Cripple had borrowed from the palace, thinking to himself, the herbs from the palace are indeed precious, but they are little inferior to the herbs in Grandpa Apothecary's herb garden. These are all hard to get spirit herbs. With them, he already had the prescription to nourish Old Ma's arm and Cripple's divine leg. He just needed to pick some supplementary herbs from the warehouse in Imperial College. Qin Mu tidied up the herbs and matched them up. He nourished Old Ma's arm and Cripple's leg with medicine, before buying some venomous insect powder of the south from the warehouse of the Imperial College. This insect powder was made of incomparably tiny insects, called vermilion beauty venomous insects. If a single insect was placed in front of a person, it was impossible to see with a naked eye, only with the third eye. After the insects were dried and turned into powder, they would revive when in contact with blood. Qin Mu asked for some fresh blood from Old Ma and Cripple and used it to dissolve the insect powder. When vermilion beauty venomous insects received the nourishment of fresh blood, they revived and made it seem as if the two goblets of fresh blood were alive. Old Ma and Cripple looked at the goblets. Their eyesight was extraordinary, and could naturally see the insects in the blood. There were tens of thousands of them densely packed in the goblet, and the sight of it was terrifying. Cripple smiled. Mua, you plan to use these insects to cure our limbs. What insects are these? Are they harmful or not? Among the people in the village, Butcher could only claim to be number 2 when ranked on fiendishness that could make little maidens cry. The number 1 was Apothecary, who loved to raise flowers and little insects. Apothecary's face was scary, but his insects were scarier. Cripple was used to stealing stuff, and everyone's room had been visited by him. Even Qin Mu's sugar-coated hawthorns were scammed away by him a few times, but he had never touched Apothecary's room. Qin Mu followed Apothecary to learn the art of healing, so he was quite knowledgeable about insects. Looking at the insects in the two goblets, Cripple couldn't help feeling his hair stand on end. He kept having the feeling that a wicked person was trying to harm him. Grandpa Cripple, don't worry. The use of vermilion beauty venomous insects is one of the venomous insect techniques from 5 sprouts of the southern borders. There's no harm to the body. Qin Mu injected the insect blood into the blood vessels of Old Ma's arm and Cripple's leg, and the vermilion beauty venomous insects were now planted into the limbs. He then said, the reason why these insects are called vermilion beauty venomous insects is because there are some women from the sects of the southern borders who use them to freeze their beauty and preserve their youth. They even continue to look alive after they are dead. Looking alive after dying, Cripple gave a shudder, still feeling that these vermilion beauty venomous insects weren't anything good. Qin Mu placed Cripple's leg and Old Ma's arm into the medicinal cauldron. There was already a cauldron of medicinal decoction there, and he said, this kind of venomous insect can eat away the dead blood in the blood, the dead skin on the skin, the mucous membrane when muscles are damaged, broken bones, and dead bone marrow. That's why people who use vermilion beauty venomous insects are able to preserve the appearance of their youth until they die of old age. Grandpa Apothecary said he had a few intimate friends of the fairer sex who raised this kind of venomous insect in their body. Even years later, they still looked 16 to 17 years old and were very tight. Grandpa Apothecary said he likes girls who are very tight. The youth revealed a thoughtful expression. What does girls who are very tight mean? Cripple said, you're still young, don't think about these nonsensical things. Can I use them? Qin Mu found a seed from the spirit herbs taken from the palace, and lifted up a floor tile in the main room, revealing jade-like soil underneath, of course. However, there's a disadvantage to this kind of venomous insect. If they get hungry, they start eating the healthy flesh and blood, so people who have these venomous insects need to use fresh blood to raise them. As time goes by, there will be more and more vermilion beauty venomous insects in their body, so the fresh blood they have to consume will grow in quantity. He opened his Taotier's sack and took out some water from Jade Dragon Palace to water it. Grandpa Apothecary said that in the land of 5 sprouts, it is a frequent occurrence that beautiful women seduce young and strong men. After a night of fun, only the skin of the men would be left, their owners having turned into dissolute ghosts. The essence and blood sucked away from their bodies would have been used by the women to feed their vermilion beauty venomous insects. Cripple shuddered. After Qin Mu watered the soil, it bulged out and a soft shoot popped out, growing taller and taller at a speed visible to the naked eye. The youth executed Overlord Body 3 elixir technique, as he continued walking around the tiny sapling in the main room. He then executed Earth Eon Creation technique, and struck the tiny sapling with madras. The moment his palm and his 5 moving fingers touched the leaf of the sapling, they would immediately get deflected. When the branches and leaves came into contact with his palm or fingers, there were actually ding and dong sounds which were like notes of a guqin. A melodious rhythm rang out in the main room. Qin Mu stepped about, and with his Earth Eon Creation technique, the small tree grew to the height of a human and began to sprout, revealing lush green leaves. Next, flower buds grew out and bloomed into snow-white pear blossoms. The reputation of vermilion beauty venomous insect isn't good. So when I went to the warehouse of Imperial College to buy it earlier, the directorate even asked what I wanted to use it for. That directorate said that there are many females in the kings, dukes, and ministers' families that like these kinds of things. There are also some consorts in the palace that like them, so Hall of Supreme Healing had altered these venomous insects, so that they couldn't reproduce. Qin Mu's footsteps didn't stop, and neither did his hands. The mudra continued to change like Guanine flicking her fingers. Each flick produced a thump sound of a stone landing into a calm lake. The pear blossoms on the tree withered as green pears grew out. Those pears were small and exquisite, only the size of a thumb. However, under the transformation of Qin Mu's mudra, the fruits slowly grew bigger. Imperial Physician, you even created an insect elimination pill, so when the vermilion beauty venomous insects start to harm the body, one can consume this pill to kill the vermilion beauty venomous insects and remove them from their body. Qin Mu transformed his creation technique, continuing to ripen the fruits, and the green pears on the tree became as big as a fist. I had the directorate of the warehouse fetch an insect elimination pill for me to have a look. The herbs used in it are only ordinary herbs, yet they are sold for an exorbitant price. Even Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's month's salary isn't enough to buy one of them. That directorate said that Imperial Physician, you had relied on this pill to become a tycoon among the Imperial Physicians. Cripple's eyes lighted up. Imperial Physician, you. Tycoon. The pears on the tree turned yellow and gave off a fragrant fruity smell. Qin Mu plucked a few and threw them to Old Ma and Cripple. The 2 old men took a bite, and the sweetness of the pear spread throughout their mouth, making them exclaim in admiration. What kind of spell did little divine physician use to transform these pears? Old Ma asked. Qin Mu blushed and said, Grandpa Ma, stop making fun of me. This is the Earth Eon Creation technique that Granny taught me. Earth Eon Creation technique. Old Ma and Cripple looked at each other in dismay, and Cripple muttered, I saw Granny Sai execute this move to refine the sun before. At the time of noon, the 5 hearts faced upwards to gather the essence of the sun, causing the fire clouds in the sky to come surging over. The sight was so terrifying that it was obvious at first glance that it was a top-notch technique of the devil path. Granny Sai used this technique to scorch many people to death, which is very unlike how you used it just now. Qin Mu was stunned. Could I have cultivated it wrongly? Old Ma disagreed. You didn't cultivate it wrongly. You had cultivated it purely, while I reckon Old Woman Sai was the one that had strayed from the path. The sun nourishes all living things, so by right it should be used this way. Qin Mu plucked a few more pears and sliced them into half, before placing them in the medicine decoction. I use vermilion beauty venomous insects to get rid of the dead parts in the arm and leg, and after they are gotten rid of, I will use medicine to force the vermilion beauty venomous insects out. The insects won't harm your limbs. This yellow pear is a herb to excite the medicinal energy of other herbs. It's also pretty delicious, but there are little medicinal properties in it. His knowledge in the art of healing even surpassed that of Imperial Physician Yu. This physician had used insect elimination pill to poison vermilion beauty venomous insects, so after they died, they would still remain within the body to be slowly discharged. Qin Mu, however, had used medicine to force these venomous insects to swim out by themselves, not leaving a trace behind. Furthermore, the medicinal decoction he had refined could help improve blood circulation, exciting the activity of Old Ma's arm and Cripple's arm, which would help with the recovery of its life force. When the limbs were nursed back to health, he could reattach them back. Qin Mu plucked the other pears and filled up a basket full of them. He then pulled out the pear tree with its roots and moved it to the courtyard. Qin Mu called Hu Linga and the dragon Qilin over, giving some pears to them as well. Hu Linga tasted a mouthful and exclaimed endlessly. The dragon Qilin also ate quite a few of them. Even if these weren't scarlet fire spirit pills, it still ate heartily. It's time for this fellow to lose some fat. Qin Mu stared at this dragon Qilin and thought to himself, if he continues eating like this, I doubt he will be able to fly up while stepping on fire clouds. Cripple couldn't sit still. After staying half a day at Qin Mu's place, he started grumbling about going out for a walk. Old Ma was worried he might meet Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, so he went out with him. The person that Cripple always obeyed was Old Ma. He was respectful and afraid of him, so he could not reject him. Even if the two had run out, Qin Mu wasn't worried about their safety. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was also heavily injured, so if he met Cripple might not be the one at a disadvantage. Furthermore, Old Ma was the most steady person in the village. With Old Ma around, Cripple wouldn't fool around. A few days passed by, and the imperial scholars that had gone to the front lines returned. In Lizhu, Surging River, and Deer County, they had met with Great Mountain Sect summoning a devil, 9 Spectre Sect summoning souls, and Corpse Immortal Cult controlling corpses. After they received the surprise attack of General Xiaoyi, 30% of the imperial scholars that had headed to the battle were killed. These 30% were the elites of the elites, so they could be said to have suffered a great loss. The imperial scholars, who had gone forth into the darkness, had been completely wiped out. Luckily, the main forces of Eternal Peace Empire's army had managed to quell the rebellion in Surging River under the command of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. General Yu Yuan Chuyun had also managed to gather the power of everyone to slay the devil god that was summoned forth and made his way to the gate of the netherworld. Lizhu Prefecture Magistrate Yu Yuan Chuyu had led her army across the river to stop General Xiaoyi, and only when both sides of the army launched a bloody battle on the surface of the river that the power of General Xiaoyi's army finally came to a halt. The swords of Yu Yuan Chuyu and Yu Yuan Chuyun matched harmoniously as the sun set in Surging River. At that time, a sword sun was half sunk into the heart of the river, and numerous sword lights burst forth from the setting sun in the heart of the river, slaying countless people from the rebel army. Flying ships fell from the sky and corpses rained down. General Xiaoyi could only retreat. Only when Yu Yuan Chuyu and Yu Yuan Chuyun's armies crossed the river was the chaos in Lizhu quelled. They checked the imperial scholars after that, and only then did they realize that they had suffered a great loss. There were even some directorates who had died in battle to save the scholars by fighting the devil. After that, numerous scholars had followed the directorates to quell the rebellion. Only when Imperial Preceptor returned to the court did the scholars' experience end and they returned to Imperial College. They were thus slightly later than Qin Mu. There were many Imperial scholars that had died, and Ji Yulinwan couldn't avoid the blame, so he requested his punishment from the Emperor. The Emperor forfeited his salary for half a year and demoted him to a 4th-ranking official. He was still in charge of Imperial College, but he wasn't spared from his duty. Ji Yulinwan ordered people to tidy up the casualty list, hoping to see Qin Mu's name there, but was a pity it didn't appear. After tidying up the casualty list, he immediately headed to the palace to meet the emperor. On his way, he met a eunuch that announced imperial decrees heading towards Imperial College, and Ji Linwan immediately said, "Eunuch, are you going to Imperial College to announce an imperial decree?" That eunuch smiled. "Congratulations, Lord. The Imperial Academician gained merit in quelling this rebellion, which saved the scholars under you. His Majesty wants me to bring the imperial decree to him and raise his official position." Ji Linwan's expression froze, and he said angrily, "This is what he should do. Why is there a need for reward?" His Majesty said that some people can't even do what they should do properly, so he decided to use this as a warning to others. As a warning? Am I the one being warned? The corners of Ji Linwan's eyes twitched as he felt anxious in his heart. He took out a few great abundance coins and stuffed them into the eunuch's hand before bracing himself on his way to the palace. Just a few steps later, he met another imperial decree eunuch, who was also rushing to Imperial College. "Congratulations, Lord Ji Linwan asked absent-mindedly, "Eunuch, what joy is there?" "Lord Ji might not know, but the Imperial Academician of your Imperial College gained merit in quelling the rebellion, so His Majesty sent me to bestow a reward, promoting him." Ji Linwan was shocked and cried out, "Another promotion? There was a eunuch just now who was going to promote him. Why is he getting promoted twice in a row?" The imperial decree eunuch said, "His Majesty said that the first one was because others didn't do what they were supposed to do. An Imperial Academician had done what he was supposed to do, therefore he wanted to promote him to upper 6th ranking. Whereas this time, Imperial Academician had contributed to the quelling of the rebellion, and did a great merit, at the southern border, so is being promoted again to the lower 5th ranking." Ji Linwan took out a few great abundance coins and stuffed them into the eunuch's hand secretly before muttering, "Oh, so it was his contribution. Imperial Academician is the academician of our Imperial College. For him to be rewarded for his contribution, I'm also honored." "That's right." The imperial decree eunuch was all beaming smiles as he hurried away. Ji Linwan continued walking towards the palace, with his thoughts wandering, when he met another imperial decree eunuch. When the eunuch saw him, he was full of smiles. "Congratulations, Lord Ji. "Congratulations." Ji Linwan asked with a black face, "Eunuch, what joy is there?" "His Majesty made me bring the decree to promote Imperial Academician." The old eunuch then continued, "Imperial Academician Qin Mu treated the injuries of Imperial Preceptor, therefore he is promoted to upper 5th ranking Palace Grandee, receiving the same treatment as the directorates. Getting promoted 3 times in a day, this is a great joy for your Imperial College." Ji Linwan nodded emotionlessly, and took out a few great abundance coins to stuff them into that old eunuch's hand without anyone knowing. He gave a forced smile and said, "I'm honored as well." When the eunuch had walked away, Ji Linwan's face turned entirely black. With Qin Mu being promoted and he demoted, he would be on the same level as him in no time. Ji Linwan even had to spend quite a sum of money due to the other being promoted 3 times in a row. If he continues to get promoted, I'll be the one who has to call him Lord. Ji Linwan composed himself and went to see the emperor to hand over the list of casualties. Emperor Yangfeng was currently reading his memorials, and upon Ji Linwan's entrance, he raised his head to take the list. After taking a look at, he said with pain in his heart, "These scholars were all my talents, the future pillars of the empire. Just because the news got leaked, they were harmed by the scums. I want to kill." Cold sweats broke out on Ji Linwan's forehead. He didn't dare say a word as he didn't know if the emperor would want to kill him as well if he interrupted. Emperor Yangfeng stood up and walked to and fro. He suddenly slammed the table and asked bitterly, "I had only passed down the imperial decree about the location of the scholars' experience on the point of departure. So how did they get ambushed?" "Ji Linwan, Minister Ji. Tell me your opinion. who was the one that leaked the news. Ji Yulinwan muttered to himself irresolutely, looking at the situation of the battle in Lizhu. Lizhu Prefecture magistrate had already invaded Dia County. When the directorates and scholars arrived at Lizhu, the rebels executed Seoul Guide precisely. This means the rebels knew the exact time when the scholars would reach Lizhu, as if they had a premonition. They should have received the news of the scholars coming forward for an experience, which was why they still had the power to summon the devil and many souls even after invading Dia County. This means it wasn't the directorates or the scholars who had leaked the news and he braced himself to continue. And it was me or the other first-ranking high officials who had leaked the news. The traitor is right among us. Emperor Yang Feng sneered. Seems like there are some people among us who want me to shift but give the throne to them. Other than you and me, those that had come forth that day for discussion and knew about this matter were all first-ranking high officials, the teachers of the Crown Prince, as well as Sichu, Sikong, and Duke. Who do you think is the traitor among them? Huge beads of sweat rolled down Ji Yulinwan's forehead, as he gritted his teeth and didn't say a word. Emperor Yang Feng gave him a glance and snorted coldly. You don't dare to say. Seems like you aren't loyal to me. Cold sweat poured down Ji Yulinwan's forehead. This minister has been frozen in great ruins for over 200 years. So I'm not familiar with the ministers of the imperial court, therefore I don't dare to speak. Just speak whatever is on your mind, I'll pardon you. I'm naturally slow-witted and very dumb. My junior protector sword even got scammed away by the imperial academician, which shows how dumb I am. Emperor Yang Feng smiled with extreme anger and pointed at his nose. Stop beating around the bush. Imperial academician scammed your sword, but you could have lowered your head and apologized to him to ask for it back. If you are dumb, what need is there for you to be the Grand Chancellor? You can just pack your things up and scram. Tell me, who do you suspect? Ji Yulinwan gritted his teeth and raised his head. A few of Crown Prince's teachers are suspicious. What did you say? Emperor Yang Feng was unable to restrain his anger, and his emperor's might burst forth, pressuring Ji Yulinwan to lower his head. Suddenly, Emperor Yang Feng turned decrepit and waved his hand. Minister Ji Yu, you're very smart, very smart. Fall back. Ji Yulinwan was covered in cold sweat as he slowly fell back. Come back, Emperor Yang Feng said. Ji Yulinwan's hair stood on end, and he braced himself for the walk back. Emperor Yang Feng said slowly, this time Imperial Preceptor did a huge contribution, and I have yet to reward him. What do you think I should reward him with? Ji Yulinwan lowered his head. What can the Emperor reward him with? Emperor Yang Feng shook his head. Nothing else. Ji Yulinwan thought for a while and said, then reward Imperial Preceptor with beautiful women and money. You have the same idea as me. Emperor Yang Feng sighed. I'm just afraid he will reject them like he always does. Ji Yulinwan hesitated before saying, many things happened this time. If Imperial Preceptor is really clever, he will definitely accept. Emperor Yang Feng was stunned, then he smiled. You're also a clever person. I'm not warning you and you have no need to be warned. Fall back. Also, don't keep messing with Imperial Academician. You can't mess with him, his power is beyond your imagination. Every time you give him trouble, I'm embarrassed for you. You're someone I placed in an important position despite everyone being against it. I don't want to keep cleaning up after your messes. Ji Yulinwan felt ashamed as he fell back and thought to himself, I can't mess with him. I can't mess with him. I, a big shot in the Devil Path, one of the few important figures of the Devil Path, can't mess with a brat of 5 elements realm. Have I lived the past few hundred years for naught? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor went back to reading his memorials, then suddenly placed his vermilion brush down, falling into a daze. I had sat down on this seat when I was middle-aged, while some other sons had even died from the long wait. It looks like my crown prince doesn't want to be like me and wait on the seat of the crown prince for too long. In Imperial College, Qin Mu received 3 imperial decrees and his official position was raised to upper 5th ranking Palace Grandee. Palace Grandee was a welfare position and held no real power. People in it were civil officials of the empire in a way, but they were still wanderers. It was obvious that the emperor still had some doubts since Qin Mu was the master of heavenly devil cult. The emperor wouldn't give him real power, so that all levels of society wouldn't be filled with villains from the devil cult. Qin Mu threw the 3 imperial decrees into the west room, greatly startled. He was still cultivating the other 4 transformations in 5 elements realm. When heading to the south to quell the rebellion, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had given them many pointers. So when Chen Wanyan, Cai Yinxiang, and the rest returned from the southern border, they immediately headed to Floor of Heavenly Records to look for 5 element realms techniques. Cai Yinxiang even borrowed the Imperial Academician's book tablet from Qin Mu to enter the 3rd floor of Heavenly Records to browse through the techniques. Qin Mu took in and sent out the star force of Saturn, and his body gradually transformed. His legs fused into one and turned into the tail of a snake. With a human head and snake body, he was almost 10 yards tall. At the same time, 2 tightly shut gates appeared behind him. During the journey to the south, he had already managed to cultivate the god transformation of Mercury Sovereign, Mars Sovereign, Jupiter Sovereign, and Venus Sovereign. It was only the form of Saturn Sovereign that he found hard to cultivate. No matter how dense his vital chi was, he couldn't form the most perfect form of Saturn Sovereign. When he executed Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique this time, the tightly shut gate behind him gradually became clearer. Yet the words on it were still blurry, and he was unable to make them out. Saturn Sovereign was extremely special among the 5 elements star sovereigns. Saturn Earth Marquis technique was the head of the 5 elements and was unexpectedly hard to cultivate, especially the gate behind Saturn Sovereign. Qin Mu was able to transform into the form of Saturn Sovereign, but the gate behind him never fully materialized. The words on it were always blurry. From the sky, an earth-yellow light poured down continuously into his body. The star force of the earth element surged forth and stabilized the body of his god transformation. Gradually, Qin Mu discovered that the form of Saturn Sovereign still had more to its transformation. An apparition of a scroll appeared in his hands. When he looked at the apparition of the scroll, the writing on it was still blurry. However, from the peculiar lines there, the writing on the scroll should be tadpole script. It looked like sun, moon, insect, and fish, which was different from the writing of the modern day. Qin Mu had learned from Def, this great scholar, for close to 10 years. Def had extremely deep knowledge regarding ancient texts, but he had never taught Qin Mu about this kind of tadpole script. Qin Mu turned his head and looked at the writings on the apparition of the gate. Even though they were still blurry, he could see the similarity between the writing on the scroll and the gate. What kind of text is this? Qin Mu could faintly feel that something was weird. If every martial arts practitioner of 5 elements realm had such a gate behind their back and a scroll in the hands of their Saturn Sovereign form, there would have definitely been someone who had studied the writings on the gate and scroll thoroughly and analyzed their profound meaning. So why hadn't Imperial Preceptor mentioned anything about it? Could it be that other people's Saturn Sovereign form had no gate nor scroll? While Qin Mu was thinking, a deep devilish voice rang out in his mind. Stop letting your imagination run wild, these are Yudu's writings. How would a weakling like you recognize the writings of Yudu? Qin Mu's hair stood up on end, and he said in a panic, Who? Who is talking in my body? Acting. The voice laughed. How long are you still going to act in front of me? When I borrowed your eyes to look at Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's battle, didn't you recognize me then? summoner of the ruler of Juqian. This video will end here.